Hello and welcome to this digital camera magazine video tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to create a black and white HDR image. So that's a black and white high dynamic range. And we're going to do this by taking a raw file, processing it 3 times with 3 different exposures, and then using a series of layers to basically expose for the sky area, the hills, the land, the foreground, and also here in the shadow areas. And we want to basically even it out and then increase the contrast a little bit, use a little bit of dodge and burn just to create that real sort of black and white HDR look. So if we take a look at the final image, we can see what I'm on about. And here we have quite a striking landscape, really sort of pulled out a lot of the detail within the image. The contrast in the hills, if we just go back to the colour image here, you can see is quite low. So what we've done is just use some levels on the hill layer, which we'll come to later, just to kick the detail out and also just to bring it into the same sort of contrast as the rest of the image. And we've done that by just purely using a series of layers and 3 different processes of the same raw image. Okay, so we're going to show you how to do that. So first of all, I'll just close this image down. And we want to start off by opening up the raw file. Now you can find this on your CD this month, and it's in the black and white HDR folder. Once the image is opened within Photoshop Elements or Photoshop CS, what we want to do first of all is just to open up the image with a slightly reduced exposure. So the first exposure I'm going to go for is minus 0.5. and that'll just take down the exposure of the image, and there we can see we've got quite a lot of nice detail going on in the cloud area. So now if I click open, that'll open itself up into Photoshop Elements, and what I want to do is copy and paste that into a new layer so I can close down the original file and then re-expose that raw file for the next part of the image. So to do that, I go Control A, which selects the entire screen, Control C or Apple C, which will copy the screen, and then if I go Control or Apple N, that'll bring up the new document window. And because we've copied the area of the screen that's there, it'll actually take in the dimensions and the resolution of whatever it is that you've copied. So if I just click OK and go Control or Apple V, and that'll paste that landscape into the new document. Now in the image bin at the bottom, if I just double click back on the original file, go Control or Apple W, and that'll just close that down. And what we want to do now is just to reopen that file. So if I go to File, Open Recently Edited File, and just open up our raw image again, and this time on the exposure I want to change the exposure from minus 0.5 to just 0.5. So take away the minus, hit tab, and we can now see the image is lightened up. We've got quite a nice exposure here for the land area. So click open, and as we did with the last one, I want to go Control or Apple A just to select the image, Control or Apple C just to copy it, double click back on our working image, and Control or Apple V just to paste our new layer in. Double click back on the original raw file, again Control or Apple W just to close that down. And then we want to go back to Open Recently Edited File and reopen that raw image. Now this time we need to really lighten up those shadows so that when we start layering them up, we've got all of the detail within the shadow area. So if we go back down to exposure, take away the 0.5, and we want to increase that right up to about 3. And there you can see it's really lightened up everything, and we've got quite a lot of detail and information coming through in that shadow area. So now we can just click open, and we have our last raw processed image for our set. And as before, we want to copy that by going Control or Apple A, Control or Apple C, then click back on our working document and go Control V, and that'll paste our last layer in. Just go back to our raw file, we want to close that down, don't want to save that. And before we go any further, we're now going to save down our untitled document. So if we go to File, Save As, and we'll call that Black and White HDR, and just click Save. So we've saved that down, we've given it a name, and now what we want to do is just to create all of the layers that we're going to use within our black and white HDR. So if we go and click back down onto layer 1, as it's called at the moment, and what we want to do is just duplicate that twice. So if you just right click and go duplicate layer, and we'll just click OK for now, and right click again and duplicate layer. So we've now got our 5 layers. And what we're going to do, it's always good to name your layers so you know where you are. If you want to come back and make adjustments later on, instead of clicking the visibility of layers on and off, it's a good idea if you've got them named, then you can just quickly look down and see exactly what layer refers to what area of the picture. So here we're going to name our top layer Shadow, and this will basically refer to this area here. Next layer down we're going to call Foreground. Layer down from that we'll call Land, and that refers to all of this area here. Behind that we will have the hills, and the final layer that we want is the sky. Now I'm also going to make one more duplicate, and this will become apparent later on, and I'm just going to call this a guide. And this is actually going to just sit just below the sky layer, and we're not actually going to use that at all, but as we start to create masks, then it'll become apparent why that's there. Okay, we're now going to convert the image into black and white, and if you're in Photoshop Elements 5 or Elements 6, then you can use the Convert to Black and White feature. In Elements 5 it's under the Enhance menu. If you're in a version that's older than that, then you can just use Desaturate. And you can find that under the Enhance, Adjust Color and Adjust Hue Saturation. And if you click there, it'll bring up the Hue Saturation dialog. Just slide the saturation slider down to -100 and click OK. Once you've done that for the shadow layer, click down onto your foreground layer. This time, instead of going up to the menu, go Control U or Apple U on a Mac and slide your saturation slider down and click OK, and then repeat this for all of the other layers so they're all black and white. Okay, I've now converted all of those layers into black and white, and if I just click through the visibility of each of these layers, and you'll see the slight variation between the top 3 layers, exposing each of the different areas that I want for our image. Okay, before we go on, I want to save that file down. So if we go up to File and Save, and that just makes sure that if anything happens, then we have that file saved and we can reopen it in case of any problems. Okay, I'll stop there. We've now got our image prepared, ready to convert to black and white HDR. In the next bit, we'll take a look at adjusting each of those layers with levels so that we've then got it prepared for our layer masking.